Hello, welcome to Fulhamish podcast, your weekly roundup of everything to do with Fulham FC. Thank you for downloading this episode. My name is Sammy James, and it was April Fool's Day on Saturday. And tonight I'm joined by the three biggest jokers around, Ben Jarman, Jack Collins, and Farrell Munker here. How are you all doing?
You're being
Hello,
very
listeners.
kind to us.
Get out of my catchphrases. Hello, listeners.
Richard Bamber, Jack, has asked if you can change it to hello ladies instead of hello listeners.
I'm leaving that one to Farrell. Go on, lad.
I don't think it would sound so sexy coming from my voice.
London Irish Whites. Anyway, Fulham played one hell of a trick on Saturday. After lurking outside of the playoffs the entire season pretty much, with 7 games to go, we finally leapfrogged Sheffield Wednesday into the playoffs after a 1-0 victory against Rotherham and a little help from our friend Angus MacDonald up at Barnsley in the South Yorkshire derby. We'll be discussing Saturday's win against Rotherham, which relegated them to League One, and also looking at Sheffield Wednesday in focus. We're going to be speaking to Chris Holt, who is a Sheffield Wednesday journo for the Sheffield Star, a little bit later to get his perspective. And also we'll be looking at the upcoming Derby and Ipswich games and then answering your questions at the end. But Jack, some 3-word reviews, please, to get us started off from Saturday's win at Rotherham.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Maxine Thurston's Let's Do This.
Okay.
She's really up for it.
Very positive,
Was that
Maxine.
before or after the game?
I think.
Is that after hearing your hello ladies?
Yeah, probably. Harry Lee says smash and grab. I was, man like a Luco from Carl Kent, that one was for Ben. And I like That Will Do from David Wellington, who pretty much sums it up on a plate, really, doesn't he? That will do.
I liked the one that said Wembley, Wembley, Wembley. That was a good one.
Capital letters for the final Wembley, I believe that one as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, they all count.
Well, it was a scraptacular victory against Rotherham away at the New York Stadium. Credit to that one for Jeff Bruce on Twitter. I like that word, scraptacular. With Sonny Aluko's second half bundle enough to claim us the 3 points on Saturday. Michael Maldor was back in the side for Tim Ream, presumably with the latter playing late on Wednesday night in the USA. Martin also came into the side. First time he's played 90 minutes since Burton away. Ben, I'll start with you. Not the prettiest of victories we'll see this season. In fact, that's been the theme both times we played Rotherham this season. Neither of them were particularly wonderful victories, but we got the job done, and that's what we failed to do against Blackburn and Wolves, so it makes a nice change.
Yeah, it's a good result for us, and it pushes us into the top 6, as we've already spoken about. But I just think Rotherham were just trying to prove a point, weren't they, in front of their fans, trying to put up a good show before the inevitable really happened. And I think over the course of the 2 games we've played against them, they haven't looked actually as bad as I thought they would. And Sonny Aluko said the same thing on Instagram this week and highlighted their left-back, Fisher, said that he was actually quite a tough opponent to play against, so I can see them probably bouncing up again next season. But yeah, we got the job done, finally, and we're finally in the playoffs, and we've stopped bottling in it now.
Jack, Michael Maldor was back in the side for Tim Ream. We had lots of discussion, especially on last week's podcast. I think it was Owen who came on, who was particularly not a big fan of Tim Ream. Yeah. What difference do you think he made at centre-back? It seems slightly more assured at the back, although Rotherham had their chances.
Rotherham did have their chances, and it wasn't by any means a shutout in terms of, closing opposition down. That said, there was a clean sheet at the end of it, and, it's hard to put something like that into context if it's just people being wasteful with their chances. But, there were a few opportunities that were spurned. But, for the most part, it seemed to be a game of very few chances at either end, really. And I think that one of my favourite things is, and you were pointing this out earlier, Sammy, the highlights package for Sky Sports has a red screen for the first sort of 10, 15 seconds of the package. And that's genuinely due to a lack of, goal mouth action. And I've seen it done before in one of the QPR games earlier this season. So I think the fact that there was not that much going on at either end has got to be something to be said for our centre-back pairing. So, will Slavisa tinker with that for Derby? Maybe, but why would you change it if it ain't broke?
Interesting that you mentioned that there weren't enough highlights. I remember back in the Premier League days, I think it might have been away at St Andrews. Both teams were fighting relegation, as you'd imagine. And I think it was one of the first times ever that Match of the Day didn't show any first half highlights. In fact, Gary Lineker had to say, look, guys, we don't have anything for the first half. So here's the commentator, and we're going straight into the second half because there's absolutely nothing that happened.
There was a game in League Two once a few years ago, and their official highlights package was the referee blowing the whistle to start the game, and then the referee blowing the whistle to end the game, and that was the official highlights package. It might have been someone like Leighton Orient or Dagenham or Redbridge.
It's Yeovil, I think.
Oh, really?
Farrell, obviously it was a difficult one going away to Rotherham to battle a side that have had so many defeats this season. I think actually, so they've lost 30 games in the league now, and the Football League record, at least the Championship record, is 34. But still, it's always difficult coming up against a side that just are fighting the inevitable. So it could have been a banana skin on Saturday.
Yeah, we've obviously had a few banana skins that we've had over the past few weeks. We always see teams now again and again who, once the inevitable is happening, as you said, that the pressure is off and they start to sort of play a bit better. We saw it when Fulham got, in the season we got relegated. When we played Crystal Palace the last game of the season, all the pressure was off. And they were a high-flying team at the time, and we gave them a really good game. We got a last-minute equaliser, but I distinctly remember that we probably should have won that game with even a weakened team. So I remember at that time there was a lot of people after the game going, do you know what, this is actually pretty good. We've obviously got a lot of good players out there. They more than matched a Premier League team. Not to get drawn onto that.
Can you remember the last time we actually did relegate a team? I feel like it hasn't happened for a long time. Or vice versa, where a team's like won the league or got promotion against us.
The last one, I think, was when we relegated Derby, when we drew with them 2-2.
Did we relegate them?
Yeah, in similar circumstances where they probably got less points than Rotherham. I think that was the season they got 11 points. I remember Hamu Bouatsa scoring the stupidest goal ever because he had a pretty much open goal to aim for. He shot it. It was going miles wide, but it went in between former Fulham player Dean Leacock's legs and into the goal, unfortunately for Derby, and that pretty much relegated them.
Didn't they have an Argentine striker who came in randomly for that second half of the season and scored a brace?
Yeah, Villa, I think his name was.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Not David.
Yeah, no, not Ricky.
Ricky, yeah. We relegated Norwich as well. That game that we won 6-0 at the Cottage, and they came out fighting for their lives, and Papa Bouba Diop had a one-man masterclass and literally ran the show from start to finish, and then curled in a real peach of a soft
kick.
It wasn't even like a hammer. He literally just curled one top bins, and you're like, well, I mean, who knew he had that in his locker?
That day was crazy because I mean Norwich were all out. They had 3 or 4 golden chances before we had nothing, and then all of a sudden Bouba Diop, boom.
Dean Ashton had a really good chance, I remember. And we had a very good save from whoever's sticking in net at the time.
Oh, God, who would that be at the
Niemi?
time?
Yeah, probably Antti Niemi.
Crazy story I heard about that game. Don't know if it's true, but it's a great story anyway. A Fulham fan got offered, and I think he accepted it, I think something like
£1,500 for a ticket.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, and I think over 1,000 definitely for the 2 tickets for him and his wife or Mrs.'s tickets, and he was like, yep, and they just went shopping down the Chelsea Road for the afternoon. Didn't matter to him, did it?
No,
I'd take that.
Well, imagine if you were that Norwich fan. That'd be so upsetting. Not only did you see your team get relegated, but you also spent £1,000 on it. Oh God, I feel for him. Someone should find him and get that man his money back. We should send one of them e-petitions.
Crowdfund him.
Yeah, she's still probably enjoying her Prada handbag that she bought that afternoon. So yeah, not easy to face Rotherham. And I say, a few of those chances, Ben, that they missed in the first half, a really good one. Danny Ward's close range header going wide, and Frecklington had a good long range shot. Well saved by Button. He had a good game. I know lots of people were claiming for him to be man of the match, David Button.
Yeah, so personally, I think Button had a pretty good game. His save from Frecklington was pretty outstanding. I think he's got better and better over the past few weeks. I think there's still a lot to be said for his footwork when he's getting the ball passed back to him, and there's a lot of unease amongst the crowd. But I think overall, the command of his box is getting better. His long-range saves are getting better, and his concentration levels have improved recently as well.
And that's partially down to Slav having the trust in Button that he's had all season. That must feel great for him that he's had some ropey performances, some dodgy moments, and the fans there's a lot of fans that like Marcus Bettinelli, and he must have felt at sometimes like he didn't fully have the backing of the fans. So to have that such 100% confidence from Slavisa that, no, you're my number one, has probably done wonders for him now, and it's starting to pay off in the performances we're seeing.
Well, it would have been easy to drop him as soon as he hit a bad patch of form, but I think, like, if we look at the whole of football now, a lot of managers keep faith in their goalkeepers, because if you drop them at the first sign of a clanger, then that's it. Their confidence completely goes, and you're going to need some sort of competition there. I think the fans were much more on his back just coming off the back of Christmas and around the dodgy area that we had back in September. Fans were calling for him to go completely. But I think him and Bettinelli are so very close in terms of technical ability that it would be impossible to choose one over the other. But I'm glad Slav has had to do it and I haven't.
Yeah.
So
I think Button's kept us in a lot of games that people don't give him credit for, and especially the games we've, drawn or won 1-0. And, especially if you think back to Leeds, he made a couple of great stops first half when it was 1-0. And, at that point, that game could have been killed off at half-time if we were 2-0 down to Leeds. And I think that he's not given the credit he deserves. Yes, he's not the world's most assured goalkeeper, especially with the ball at his feet. But he has made a lot of very, very good saves, especially just, in the shot-stopping role. And he's also just, become on leaps and bounds in terms of claiming the ball and things from, difficult situations. And I really think that he's grown into it, and we are not giving him the kind of genuine acceptance of that. And people are still going, I don't feel comfortable. I've got past that. I've got past the point that I don't feel comfortable with David Button. I think I'd rather have him in net. And, we've been saying this for a while, but in terms of what he brings to the team and what he brings ahead of Bettinelli, I think he's a much better shot stopper than Bettinelli. And I think that he is rightly our number one and deservedly so. And I think we need to get off his back now.
Yeah. The one that really sticks out to me, the example going on from the Leeds one, was the Brentford one. We could have quite easily been equalised against. And he made two very good saves. The 1-on-1, which was, it's a better save than it actually looks, because he stays big. He does absolutely everything right. And it was a great save in the end, because it was going in. It was a good finish. And if that goes in, then you would have... The momentum was with them 100%. At the time. And that was the only time they had momentum anyway. And I think what actually also brings to the team is how good he is when he does claim the ball. He's immediately looking for a pass. But his decision-making isn't the case of, I'm going to ping it straight away because, there's only one man up there or whatnot. I think that does bring a lot to the team.
There's something else on this I think is interesting, because like you say, when he does claim it, you can see him looking for the pass, but more often than not he doesn't make it. Yeah. And I think that's because the options aren't on all the time. And I think if he caught the ball and went to ground and rolled around and then got up and passed the ball out, people would be less on his back.
Yeah.
Because it looks like he hasn't made a decision. But what I think he's doing is looking for it every time and not finding it, and therefore has to play safe.
Yeah, and it's also how quick he does it as well. Literally, as soon as he gets it, he's it's like as if he knows he's going to catch the ball straight away, and he's already thought about what he's going to do next.
Yeah, like on the contrary to my earlier point, actually kicking out of his hands, he's actually pretty good, and especially with those early options, he's well adept to, hitting those flat, long balls out to wide areas pretty quickly. But on the floor, he's still a little bit questionable.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, he's not by no means perfect. We're not here, this isn't the old David Button fan club. I just think he doesn't get the respect he deserves for the amount he's come on over the course of this season.
Yeah, Luigi Bouton.
Correct.
I love that name. Fulham missed a few good chances themselves as well, which included Chris Martin fluffing a very, very simple chance. He was free on the box, and there was Tom Kearney's ball from the left-hand side. He just seemed to take his eye off the ball at a crucial moment, a little bobble. Sent him the wrong way. Mm-hmm. Interesting, though, to see him get the full 90 against Rotherham. That was the first time he'd played the full 90. Oh, no, he's only played once since the Burton game, played the full 90. So I know that partially might be because of Derby on Tuesday, but it could mean that we really are starting to see old Chrissy Martin back in favour towards this last few games of the season.
We have been calling for him to get back into the team full time for a little while now, because we've always seen, when we've played well, he's always been integral, in the team. Yeah, he's been integral to the way we play. So I'm really glad to get him a full 90, because remember when he first joined, it was so obvious he was so lacking in match practice, and we were like, oh, I don't know whether he's good or not. But when he's full flow and fully match fit and 90 minutes week in, week out, you know, doesn't need me to tell you what he brings to the team.
I tell you what, he looked a bit ponderous first half, and he did look a bit, not heavy, but like that he was a little bit dragging his feet. And then he missed that chance, and after he missed that chance, he was probably our best player. He, you know, held up the ball really well, linked up play really well, and he went over to the fans at the end and like flat apologised and was like, I don't, you know, I missed it. You know, it's okay. We haven't, but he went over to apologise, and you know, that's not something you tend to find with someone when we've won. You know, especially because the rest of them would have been celebrating. To go over and acknowledge that you made a mistake and to kick on from a mistake that can obviously lose your head, and obviously he would have got booed, you know, when that happened, and you know what we're like. But
Royal we.
Yeah, that's not me. I'm going to put that out there. But no, you know what people are like towards Chris Martin, and when you see that kind of miss, which was, you know, was a bit of a sitter, you know, for him to, you know, kick on from that and really, really push on in the game was really nice to see. And I hope that we see him again on Saturday.
That's probably his first chance he's missed for a long time, because generally 9 times out of 10 when he gets a chance he scores.
Yeah.
Can you remember early doors in the season when he missed that chance? Remember against QPR, he went round the goalkeeper and it was that open goal. Like,
did he pass it?
Yeah, he passed it.
He passed it to Piazon.
And
or was it the other way around? One of the two.
Yeah, I thought Piazon passed it to Martin, and Martin slams it into the side netting.
Yeah.
But he's come on a long way since those days, but just hasn't found that rhythm in the side really since about January, February.
Well, it's a simple fact that if we're going to get into the playoffs, we need goals, and there's one guy that provides goals, and it's Chris Martin. And if I think that without him in the lineup or without him in the squad, it detracts some sort of goal-scoring ability. And whilst we can score a lot using this strikerless formation that we've been using the last few games, I think that Chris Martin gives us a really good focal point, and especially coming up with these big, important games, he's been there with Derby the last few seasons, albeit they have bottled it.
Yeah, there or thereabouts.
But he's got them up there, almost single-handed with the amount of goals he's scored. And I think we need to realise that if we're going to get there, and like we have now, but stay there and make a mark in the playoffs, that we're going to need someone of his calibre playing for us week in, week out.
Interestingly, do we think that Slavisa will switch it up and go strikerless against Derby, or do we think he'll put Syriac in as a like-for-like?
I think we'll probably end up seeing some sort of strikerless / fluid front four formation from him again.
It seems to work that way when Syriac plays, that he's a bit adaptable, that he can sort of come in and out, and it is that fluid front 4 or 5 or 10.
Yeah, fluid front 7.
I guess especially without having Martin there, he has only really got one out-and-out striker available to him, which is Syriac. So I could see Slavisa going for like the strikerless formation at the start, Cabano heading up the attack, if you like, because that gives him the option to bring on Syriac. Yep. But if he starts with Syriac, he's then kind of got nothing else on the bench that can get him out of jail. I mean, unless as opposed to the other way around.
Unless we went for the same sort of tactical setup as we did against Newcastle, where we go strikerless again, but this time with Sass playing left wing, sort of helping Malone out, because he's going to have Tom Ince running at him for the whole 90.
That's scary, isn't it?
I don't know about you, but yeah, I don't feel entirely comfortable with that. So I'd quite like to potentially have a look at that same formation again. Maybe that's something we can make a mark with, and then should we get 1 or 2 up or perhaps even if we need to get a goal, we just change it up a little bit and bring in Syriac.
And back to the Rotherham game, just to finish off. Luko's goal eventually went in though after 4 or 5 attempts, and then Fulham managed to keep it pretty tight after going 1-0 up, which, as I mentioned before, a nice contrast to the games that we've faced in the last couple of weeks against Blackburn and Wolves. I know we were never in the lead against Wolves, but certainly against Blackburn we struggled to keep it tight and keep things we just under control. Yeah, look really leggy and really open against Blackburn, but this game was quite the opposite. And I think that even though it is against Rotherham, albeit they've lost 30 games this season and are already down, it's a good sort of indicator that we can perhaps keep a clean sheet in these final games and then into playoffs.
We did a lot of huffing and puffing, I think, but once we scored, it all started to become a little bit easier. And, you know, a lot of people said that once we went into the lead, it didn't look really at any point ever in doubt that we could see that kind of game off.
It was almost like the Rotherham game came at the right time, wasn't it?
Yeah, we did need to get those. They did seem a little bit nervy at the start. Maybe we just needed to knock the nerves out of us before.
Well, they would have watched Wednesday
Marching on.
bottle another. They would have known that a win would put them in the playoffs, and I think that maybe the fact that we're there now will ease those nerves. I don't know. If I was to put money on it, I'd probably say it won't. I'd say it might make them even worse. But at least we've broken the barrier of actually getting into 6. So that's a start.
If you were Slavica, would you have let the players watch the Wednesday Barnsley game before the game on Saturday? Just out of interest. Would you have let them?
No, I would.
I would.
Well, it would have been too much of a. They wouldn't have been able to go and warm up and stuff.
Well,
there wouldn't have been enough time.
I think you're looking at it maybe a little bit too
Literally.
detail. I mean, you're just asking in theory, aren't you?
Yeah.
So in theory, I would have let them do it if we had time to go up and warm up and blah, 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 straight.
I'm not saying
probably
down
told
the local pub. But
I would have probably told them the score.
Yeah,
I'd let them watch the last 10 and just get the Angus MacDonald moment.
Although that would be quite funny to actually see, in the dressing room moment where the Angus MacDonald's goal goes in and see if they go mental or they go, oh, look at that.
Yeah, I'd have been tempted to say, just let them know the score. Just let's not watch it. Let's not indulge in someone else's game when we've got our own game to focus on. If it was another evening, if it had been the Friday night, I would have obviously gone, come on lads, let's watch the Sheffield Wednesday Barnsley game. But I think on the day, notwithstanding obviously that maybe actually there wouldn't have been time to watch it at that time, but yeah, I wonder if it takes away from what you've got to do if you spend time watching and analysing someone else's football game.
Also, Jokanovic made a point in his post-match interview. I don't know if anyone saw this, but his actual quote is, "We tried to be focused on our job and thinking about what we can do. We weren't thinking about Sheffield Wednesday or about any other teams. Our focus is on us in this crucial part of the competition and just getting as many points as possible for us." So
they were there.
I imagine no. I imagine they had absolutely no
There we
idea.
go. Answer to the
Pace my
question.
theory then.
But here's a picture of Slavica down the local walkabout with a pint in his hand.
And it all been on the floor after Angus MacDonald scored that 93rd minute
Slavis
equaliser.
has an Angus MacDonald tattoo.
Nicely bringing me on to our next topic, which is a little bit looking into Sheffield Wednesday. The way that the games have opened up, and we discussed the playoffs at length, maybe coming on to a month ago now, especially after the Newcastle game. And yeah, as we said, Sonny Aluko may have been the man to spark some celebrations from the Fulham fans on Saturday, but we should also be very grateful to a certain Angus MacDonald. Some terrible defending from Sheffield Wednesday, and he bundled the ball into the net, sparking wild celebrations at Oakwall and also in the concourse at the New York Stadium. And we finally leapfrogged our Yorkshire rivals into 6th spot. And the way it's opened up now, it is looking like a straight shootout between ourselves and Sheffield Wednesday for that 6th spot. Norwich lost again. Reading beat Leeds, which means that it looks like those three are kind of just now battling for who plays who in the playoffs. Would you agree that you can't really see anyone else being dragged into the 6th, 7th battle mix, apart from maybe Derby?
Oh, that's literally what I was going to say. I mean, not that I want it to happen, but if Derby win tomorrow, that puts them only 4 or 5 points behind us in 6th place.
Do you know who I kind of have a little bit of worries about? Aston Villa, 6 from 7 and 2 points behind Derby County. And you know what? If they carry on, I think they might be. I've left it slightly too. They're 10 points behind us.
It's not beyond the realms of impossibility.
And they are playing some really quite since Brentford. They lost 3-1, I think, to Brentford at Griffin Park. And since then, they've come on leaps and bounds, and it all seems to be starting to click into place for Villa.
I don't understand how we're discounting Norwich, but still have Derby and Villa as threats. When Norwich are above them in the table.
I'm not discounting Norwich, but they did lose again at the weekend.
But they could just as easily make up that ground.
Agreed, but they're not on a run of form in the way that Villa are.
True, but they could pick up.
Well, of course. I mean realistically, anyone from 16th upwards can get in the playoffs.
But not Rotherham.
What I'm saying is that
Discounting Rotherham way too early.
I think Villa are the form team in that kind of bit of the division.
This is the thing. It's crazy to think with so few games left that it's like 4 or 5 teams over one place, isn't it? It's crazy how the championship has worked out.
But you would
season.
be safe to agree that it's looking most likely, if everything goes to plan, that it probably will just be ourselves and Sheffield Wednesday in the mix.
There's a 5-point gap to Preston. You'd imagine that with 7 games remaining, that would probably be okay. I'm touching wood here and being like, you'd hope. But, anything can happen, obviously.
Well, let's hear now from Chris Holt, who is a Sheffield Wednesday correspondent for the Sheffield Star. And I started off by asking him a very similar question. Does he see it being ourselves and Sheffield Wednesday in a battle for that sixth spot?
I think so. I think it's maybe a bit too late for the other teams, although you can't really be certain. But I think it's probably going to be Fulham and Sheffield Wednesday for that final place. I certainly don't think Wednesday's shown enough form to be able to creep further up. The way they're playing at the minute, I certainly can't see them rising up to fourth or anything like that.
And how big a body blow was it on Saturday when Angus MacDonald scored to get that equaliser? Do you think that would have been pretty hard on Carlos and the team?
It felt a bit like a defeat, I must admit, because they didn't play particularly well. And admittedly, Barnsley more than deserved to get a draw from the game. And so they didn't play particularly well, but it looked like they might just hold out, and then they conceded. And so it just will have, like I say, it felt a bit like a defeat, and it will have knocked them a little bit. I don't know how much it's going to hit them in terms of how they react to it. But I guess one thing is, I mean, when I thought about it last week, about the two derby games coming up, obviously Barnsley and then Rotherham tomorrow night, I thought if they got 4 points, it wouldn't be disastrous. But I think the manner in which they conceded might just knock them a little bit. It's really difficult to say at this stage. Plus, I am a little bit concerned about having to play Rotherham. I know your boys played them at the weekend there. From what I can gather, they put up a bit of a fight for an hour at least anyway.
Yeah, they were very impressive on Saturday, Rotherham, despite them just not getting that decisive goal, really. How do you see the remaining fixtures playing out, starting with tomorrow's game at Rotherham?
Well, tomorrow's game is absolutely crucial. Most teams would see as being an easy 3 points, but Rotherham are down now. The pressure's all off them. They've got their local rivals coming. They could just go out and have an absolute blinder here. They haven't had much to shout about all season. Their manager will probably say to them, look, go and give those long-suffering fans something to cheer, something to have that they can just have a smile on their faces for one night at least. And they will be really, really up for it. So I'm a little bit concerned about, from a Wednesday point of view, I'm a little bit concerned about tomorrow night. Should they get through that, then obviously they've got Newcastle next week. You would like to think Wednesday played very well against Newcastle at St James's Park, and they seem to set themselves up really well to sort of just sit back, allow Newcastle to come at them and soak up that pressure and hit them on the break. I should think that that's probably the way they'll play again. They might get a draw. I can't see them beating Newcastle. And then who've we got after that? Cardiff, I think, after that. And then Derby. Basically, every game has its own problems that come with it. You've got teams where you don't quite know what you're going to get from them, like Ipswich and Derby and QPR. And then your boys.
So that was my final question, Chris. Do you see sixth place being decided on that final game at Hillsborough in May? It could be huge.
I think it will. I think without having seen Fulham but looking at the results, you look like you're capable of dropping points as easy as picking them up, and Wednesday are exactly the same. So I'm sort of getting the feeling that it could be a case of 1 week Wednesday, say for instance tomorrow night, you could perhaps drop points against Derby, who you don't know what way they're going to be, and Wednesday win tomorrow night, but then obviously Wednesday could drop points on Saturday and Fulham, pick up points in that game. So I can see it just being a little bit of to and fro for the next few weeks, and until we get to that stage where there probably end up being a point or two between them, either way, whether it be Wednesday or Fulham actually in the sixth place. And then I honestly do think it'll come down to that very last game, which, as you say, will be absolutely huge.
Well, Chris, if it does end up being a battle in that final game, then we'll get you on the phone then.
Yes, no problem at all. I look forward to it.
So that was Chris Holt from the Sheffield Star, who covers, I think, most Sheffield Wednesday games home and away. So he sees an awful lot of them. And he sees it being pretty tight going into these final 7 games, and he reckons we'll drop points, he thinks they'll drop points, and he thinks it could be a bit of toing and froing until the end of the season. Just looking at their upcoming fixtures, they look about as difficult as ours, really. There's not too much between them, as far as I can make out. What do you guys think?
It's literally a down-to-the-wire situation. I think that's how it's going to play out there. Like you said, the remaining fixtures are comparable to ours. There's none of them that you can say will give them a really easy ride, other than perhaps Rotherham. But in that case, like he's just said, the pressure is off them. They're just going to go out and play however they want to play, and it may cause them a few issues. I mean, we've still got Villa, Huddersfield, Brentford, and obviously Wednesday left, and they're 4 incredibly tricky fixtures.
And Norwich.
And Norwich as well. So it's not going to be an easy ride for us. And the more I'm now confident we're in the playoffs, the more I think we're going to bloody drop points, which is not great.
But Rotherham could be a tricky test for them tomorrow. Now they are relegated. It wasn't exactly a breeze for us on Saturday, far from it. And there
was
is
a moment of magic from Aluko that settled it.
Yeah, exactly.
What a worldie that was.
Magic Sonny Aluko, classic.
But they will give them a test tomorrow night, one would imagine.
Yeah, well, I mean...
There are no easy games in football, lads.
How many cliches can Jack put in one game? No, but, you know, like he said, it's a derby game and Rotherham have nothing to lose. So why wouldn't they go out and try and give Wednesday game? In fact, the best that their fans can now hope for, you know, is actually ruining one of their rivals' playoff chances. In the same way that Brentford's going to be a horrible game at points for us because all they've got left to play for is ruining our campaign. And imagine how much they'd love it. Like, just, I don't even want to really talk about it.
I guess one thing with us over Sheffield Wednesday, it can't be discounted, our massive goal difference advantage over them. Is that 11 goals between ourselves and Sheffield Wednesday?
The dream would be going into that final day with a three-point advantage and like a 10-goal difference swing, so you knew it was going to be a happy day either way.
Or just a 4-point advantage.
You'd start getting a little bit nervous at 3 or 4-0.
Okay, a 12-goal advantage. Yeah. You know what I'm getting at. Leave me be.
I saw quite an accurate description from a Sheffield Wednesday fan on a forum earlier. It was called 7 cup finals and a quarter-final. Effectively, 6 cup finals and a quarter final remaining in their season. I quite like that description of the Sheffield Wednesday game as a quarter final, effectively, to get into the playoffs,
that's really
the semi-finals.
Yeah, really well phrased,
Yeah.
whoever you are.
Yeah.
Well
I
done.
thought he was referring to the Rotherham game. That's a little bit harsh.
Sorry, mate, it's not worth any points or goal difference, though, I'm afraid.
No. So, 2 games coming up for Fulham in the next week. Tuesday sees us travel to the IPRO to face Derby County. They're under their 3rd manager this season in Gary Rowett. They've gone through Nigel Pearson and Steve McLaren. They had only won once in 10 games before Friday's home win over Queen's Park Rangers. But it's Gary Rowett's 3rd game in charge. It's looking difficult. Again, we seem to have faced another team at a bad time.
Yeah, and QPR are no pushovers at the moment. They're in a really hot vein of form, and although they did have a couple of very, very good chances towards the end, Silla missed a sitter, hit the post. But yeah, Derby looks like they've got something about them again, which is not only slightly frustrating for us, but also they're slightly below us and still knocking slightly on the door. So I don't like that game at all. I don't like the fact that there's so much tension around it after this season, and I just think it's one of those ones where, again, they'd just be so happy to derail our season after all the bad blood that's gone on, you know, between the two clubs.
I think it's going to be an incredibly tough game for us, regardless of the form that Derby were in before or after Rowett's appointment. But if Rowett is a fantastic manager at this level and could have taken Birmingham much further than they deserve to have been originally, but it's going to be, like I said, an incredibly difficult fixture for us to get 3 points out of, and I think it depends entirely on the selection that we put out there and how confident and up for it we are from the first whistle to the last. And I mean, a lot of times, especially after the second half, we come out and we look very lacklustre and we look potentially open. So if we get a goal behind, it instantly becomes a mountain to climb. But we're very good away from home, and I will back us to the hilt.
Can we make a request of the club to set up a Chris Martin cam to see how he reacts to all the goals and everything that happens in the game?
I wonder if he'll be there. I guess he probably will be, won't he?
Well, he'll always certainly be there. Also, I know what's going to happen is, do you know earlier in the season when we went to Wolves and there was that really nice video of Richard Stearman coming out and giving all the lads like a high five?
Yeah.
Watch when that happens and everyone goes mental about Chris Martin. Like, you
Yeah.
see it happening. Everyone's like, he hates the club, he hates the club. Like, it's all right, lads. He's allowed to say hello to his friends. He's not allowed to play.
There's going to be some spice in the game, though, tomorrow. I feel like it's been a big talking point between Derby and Fulham fans. And also, I feel like Gary Rowett's been quite clever. He came out after the Queen's Park Rangers game and has said Derby are very much in the playoff race, which may be slightly overstating their position. They're still quite far behind. But he's obviously said that just to give the players a real carrot for Tuesday's game.
Absolutely. Make no mistake about it. I still think they are slightly in there, especially after that win against QPR. It's a very impressive win, I thought, because, as Jack said, they're hot on form. And, I mean, they're probably thinking the same way, that they're chasing 6th, and they've got a chance to make sure 6th doesn't pick up any points tomorrow, and for them to gain 3 massive points against them. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but you know, they're going to be well up for it. This is probably going to be their last chance to actually really go for it fighting.
Do you think I'm right in saying that the first goal will be very crucial in terms of the way of the confidence, not only for Fulham but also for Derby? If they get the first goal, their tails will be massively up after Friday's victory. But this is still a side that's only won 1 in 10, whether they've got Gary Rowett now or not. If they do go down at home in front of their own fans, they might be thinking, here we go again. This is going to be the same old Derby that's been struggling for the last few months.
I would say probably not, but only because I'm thinking of the reverse fixture, because under similar circumstances, both teams were on pretty good form. And, you know, there was a lot of anticipation around the game, similar circumstances, both teams going for the playoffs.
The game in December, this is?
Yes.
Yes.
And Derby went 1-0 up, although by a mistake by Sigurdsson. But Fulham came back fighting and deservedly went 2-1 up. And then I just remember the second half being an absolute barnstormer of end-to-end football and lots of chances either side.
Yeah.
And it showed that the confidence was flowing through both teams, and it wasn't through bad defending or anything. I mean, the goal that we conceded was terrible defending all round. But it just shows the confidence going through both those teams at the time meant that it was just a great spectacle of football, and it could have ended up a win for either side at the end of it. So perhaps we could see a similar contest tomorrow evening.
Gary Rowett's never lost a game against Fulham.
Interesting.
An interesting fact for you.
How many times have we played?
4, 1-2, drawn 2.
Well, we haven't beaten Birmingham, have we, since we came down?
Well, that's probably part of it.
Yeah.
I'd imagine.
With one club.
And then Ipswich at the Cottage on Saturday. Ben, you saw Ipswich earlier this season. You were the only one out of us that made it up there on Boxing Day. Kudos to you. The Tractor Boys have drawn 9 out of the past 12 games. Now, it's a game that Fulham will expect to win, and you'd have thought 3 points is fairly essential. But the lads may be a bit nervous of a repeat of what happened against Wolves and Blackburn, as in an easier team coming to the Cottage, and this is clearly a team that knows how to shut out games, as their recent form suggests.
They shut out games because they have to, because they've got nothing further up front. They're playing with probably one player that puts the team on his back in Tom Lawrence. That is his right name,
he scores some absolute pearlers. I think he scored maybe 4 worldies in 4 games earlier this season.
He scores a lot of goals. Currently on loan from current champions Leicester. So he's one to watch out for. But I think in the reverse fixture on Boxing Day, the one that I attended, he was very, very quiet. It was actually David McGoldrick who came on as a second half substitute who gave us the most problems. But Ipswich are really good at playing very narrow and very compact football because they're very limited to what they can do with the squad that they have. I feel like the game will probably be exactly the same at the Cottage, but I think we have enough to edge it, and we showed on that day, even though we didn't play particularly well, that we can win in tough situations. Fulham reverted to like a 3-5-2 formation on that day, and that's what eased us past Ipswich, because we just crowded out the middle, and I could see us doing sort of the same thing this time around to get the win. But Ipswich, as you've said this before on the podcast, don't have a lot of consistent results, do they?
Well, they didn't used to.
Now they just draw all the time.
Now they just draw.
They're making up for it.
Because was it something that I think earlier in the season they went 26 games without having a consecutive result, either 2 wins in a row, 2 draws in a row, or two losses in a row, which is a stunning record. And now they're really making up for it. But unfortunately for fans of Ipswich Town, it's just draws and not wins. And I think they've overtaken our number of draws, which is one of the highest in the division when I was having a look at the detailed table earlier.
You know what? Ipswich aren't out of the relegation mess either.
I thought you were going to say out of the playoff race. I was thinking, goodness
Let's
me.
not discount Ipswich. They're 20th and 12 points off playoff.
They're 17th on goal difference, but there's a lot of teams scrapping for their lives around there.
Yeah. Well, Mick McCarthy did come out on after the game on Saturday after another draw, going, it's been so frustrating for the past month or two, because I thought finally, we're looking like we're safe, all we need is a couple more wins just to get us over the finishing line. And it's just
they haven't
1 point.
When Burton picking up results like a win against Huddersfield, and Bristol City beat Huddersfield 4-0, so it seems like that point in the season, and I think it was, again, Gary Rowett who said this. Sorry, I know I sound like basically just re-spieling everything that Gary Rowett said in the last 48 hours. But he said there isn't much point going for a draw at this stage of the season in any games. And I think that's going to be the case with a lot of teams we face, apart from maybe Ipswich, who seem to love it.
On our final run, and we don't have any teams that are actively fighting for their lives down at the bottom and or fighting to get in into the playoff race, unless Huddersfield somehow implode over the coming weeks and then fall down into 4th or 5th. But other than that, I think we've just got teams who are going to be playing quite freely because they feel like their season's over. Other than maybe Villa, who Jack seems to think are going to go up by the playoffs.
Automatic promotion.
Okay, well, before we end this week's podcast, we've got a few emails in the email corner. Jack, can you check the post bag, please? See what's coming in.
We do. We have a really good question. Oh, we've got another one. Oh, sorry, we've got an exciting one I haven't read. Here, let's do this one live. Hello, Fulhamish Pod. This is from Joshua Zana. Curious question and a little forward thinking. Assuming Fulham win the playoff and are promoted into the Premier League,
are we going to win the Champions League in 3 years' time?
Yes. Who do you see on this current club being let go?
Oh.
Okay, interesting. Who would be gone
I like
in the
that
summer?
because it's not who's good enough for the Premier. Who would actually be out of the squad?
Wow, that's really
caught us off guard.
Great question, Josh.
I'm guessing the Sean Kavanaghs of the world are probably been looking for a club.
Cameron Burgess probably move out of the way.
Not in the CDM role next year.
Yeah. I think Slav would try and keep much of the nucleus of the squad.
He'll probably try. He has said he wants to keep Parker another year, regardless of where we are.
Yeah.
Sigurdsson.
Sigurdsson's
Sigurdsson's probably going to go.
Yeah, I could see him hopping off somewhere. I could see Tunnicliffe going. Sorry, Jack.
Thanos Petsos. He might have to leave.
It's been such a successful loan move.
Crawley might go.
But out of the regular, let's say 14, 15 players that are starting this season, I would possibly say there'd be a few players that I think might not get in to a first team squad. I couldn't see Malone.
Maybe both the fullbacks.
I think we'd stay with the right backs because they're decent competition for each other.
Yeah.
But the left side of our defence is Cess is a great talent, but he's not quite ready yet.
Yeah.
Whereas Malone is, if you want someone to try and score for 90 minutes and in your left back, then Malone's the perfect fit. But if you want someone to defend, then we're going to need to upgrade him if we go up. So I think he'll be let go.
Do you think Chris Martin would be kept or made an attempt to weirdly sign from Derby? I don't even know what the latest is with that. But you can't see him, if we did go up, any attempts to try and sign him with what we need in the Premier League anyway.
Just had this image of Chris Martin on the 31st of August driving up and down the M1 constantly, trying to see which one wants him.
He's just going to stay at Tib Shelf, isn't he?
Can't wait for a glorious return of Stefano Okaka to Craven Cottage from Watford.
Obviously, Yozabed will come back and dominate the midfield.
There is one thing we've got to point out, the amount of loans that we do have at the moment that maybe Slav thinks I've got to keep quite a lot of my players because quite a few of the starting 11 are loan signings. Callas, Piazzon, Chris Martin, yeah. He's probably thinking to himself, I need these other squad players to be around because they're the one that's got us up.
Great question, Josh.
Yeah,
nice
thanks,
last-minute one there.
I've got a really good question. I really like this from Jack Kelly. And he says, Dear Fulhamish pod, would like to mention the relationship between the players and the fans. There seems to be a special relationship this season. Players seem to be interacting with the fans via social media or often in person. From Kenny's £3 thing with the little kid to players catching the same trains as away fans. All bodes well for team spirit and feel-good factor. Cheers, Jack. I really like this. I think it's a really important point that no one else has raised. And I think it's really important and really good.
I do think it's important for players to try and bond with the fans a little bit. You know, it is a give and take relationship. The fans do have to be kind of supportive, most of the time at least. And, you know, sometimes it can be difficult for players to find a way of interacting with fans because, you know, they're all different range of human beings. They're all there to play football. Doesn't mean they're all the same people. So it can be difficult for them to find a way to positively interact with the fans. But it does seem to be that this year is different, doesn't it? It does feel like the players are starting to find a way because they have that team spirit. So they don't have to worry about sort of they don't have to worry about interacting with each other. They can sort of go and speak to the fans as well. But that just comes probably from the winning feeling.
There were some really nice social media posts this weekend, not just about the winning. I don't know if anyone saw Luca's video of Scott Malone winning like the dressing room challenge.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, and then there's a couple today actually on the way to Derby of Kenny in one doing sweepstake of the Masters and Ryan Fredericks playing blackjack with Scott Malone, and it was like, you know, one of those things that's just quite nice to see. And you know, someone like Steph, obviously, who's not from the same kind of culture, was mad in for the Masters draw. He was like ripping up the things with Kev McDonald. I was like, it's nice to see that. You know, even if, you know, you don't have to be best mates to play football on a field, but at the same time, like, it's nice to see him getting on. It's just in a wider kind of sense.
It is good that it takes that, you know, extra 5-10 minutes a day just to put out the odd thing here and there. Probably does do a lot to kind of build that relationship.
Neeskens Cabano, if you haven't got him on Snapchat, get him on Snapchat. He's well funny. His name's like Schaefer7 or something like that.
He's got his own website, Neeskens Cabano. You can send him a little email if you just want to get in contact. A lot of it's in French, but you can find the contact form nice and easy and just drop Neeskens your thoughts.
I've been sending him quite a lot of Snapchats. He has opened a few of them.
You're such a weirdo with our players, man.
Have you sent him a Snapchat of your flag yet? Get his opinion on it.
No, I will do. He's Cabano92 if anyone wants to add him on Snapchat.
Jack's got a new flag. Do you want to get the flag out? Just to show us boys in the studio again.
All right.
No, it makes me feel sick. While Jack's doing that, on a serious note though, in a football world where getting in touch with your heroes and seeing what your heroes do on a day-to-day basis is increasingly difficult. So for us to have that snapshot into what they're doing into their daily lives and to give those kids some sort of insight into what they do is just fantastic for us.
So we record this in the Magic FM studios, and right now Jack is defacing it with his latest purchase. Which must
having trouble in
he is really struggling to.
Not going very well.
The studio is rejecting his terrible flag.
So he's got an Irish flag, because Jack's Irish, as you can obviously tell.
It's about as Irish as Andy Townsend.
It says Collins Gallagher on it. We don't know who Gallagher is.
It's the guy from Shameless.
I was going to say it's either that or the guy from Oasis.
Hold on. I'll take a photo. Shall I put it up on the...
Yeah, take a photo and we'll put it on the Fulhamish pod and you can rate what you think. And it says London Irish Whites on the bottom.
London Irish is a rugby team.
No, as in, I'm from London.
It certainly does explain
Irish.
his questionable views on football.
But Jack has got a problem. He didn't get a fire safety certificate with his flag, which I haven't personally got a problem with, but he won't be allowed it in a stadium anytime soon.
If anyone knows how
It's also too big.
No, seriously, I'm going to raise this properly. If anyone actually knows how you get a fire safety certificate for a flag, or has one, go and spare that I could sew onto my flag.
I used to work for a flag maker.
And Ben, I know people, Jarman, coming in with another one.
If it has to have it on a standard. You can't just get one afterwards because it has to be fire retardant to fall in line with EU regulations.
It is fire retardant. I got it from France, but it's it's made of a fire retardant.
Before or after Article 50?
It's a pre-Brexit flag. Leave Article 50 out of this. But yeah,
Did you have to smuggle that in from Ireland through the Irish border we now have?
Yeah, look, if anyone, why are you supposed to have whatever? If anyone has one of these little sticker things that I can stick on my flag, then
print one out and put it on yourself.
I'd be.
Stay
It has
with
to be made of
Buy one off
material, doesn't
eBay.
it? I tried. There isn't any. I didn't really have to look. But yeah, that'd be great.
But please do send your flag to Neeskins, Jack, as you seem to have some relationship with him on
I will.
Snapchat, and let him know what he thinks.
Tell him it's the Ivory Coast flag.
He's not from the Ivory
I
Coast.
know he's not.
I'll send it to
Send him out.
Syriac upside down. Hang on. There is actually another question in the post box, and this one's from Peter Hucker.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of the podcast, but not a big Twitter user, so I was wondering if I could leave a question for the Fulhamish boys. Which of our loaned out agents do you see breaking into the Fulham side or even the matchday squad next season? Cheers, Peter.
I like this. I like this question a lot.
Jack Grimmer.
So let's have a think. Who is on loan, who is potentially even close to the first team squad at the moment? So I'm not talking about like someone from the under 15s or something like that. So there's Corley Wood, Jaron Lasavig and Christensen on loan
Hozabed.
at Burton. Hozabed at Celta Vigo. Jack Grimmer, as you said, where's he on loan? Shrewsbury?
Tunners.
I think he's been. No stupid suggestions, Jack.
You've just suggested Jack Grimmer.
Legend.
Sean Kavanagh.
No, there's actually there's one more.
Richard Stearman.
Donnelly.
Stearman's
Richard Stearman's at Wolves.
Stearman's at Wolves.
Yeah, definitely Stearman then.
I think there's definitely a future for Lasavig and Christensen, 100%. I think, and he's done great things at Burton since going there. He's been involved in a lot of goals, and they've had a real upsurge in form since both Lasser and Corley have got into the side. But from what I've heard from Burton forums, Lasser has been a huge part of that, as much as Corley's grabbed a few more of the headlines with some of the goals. So if there's anyone, I really do genuinely think Lasser has a future within this squad, and he might have got the pickup in confidence that he needs.
Yeah, as a man for a soft spot with the Nordics, I do hope Lasser comes back into the squad. But also, as much as it pains me to say it, I think that agent Woodrow could come back and grab a few goals next season.
I think
If we're in
we
the
don't go
Championship.
up, yeah, I think
if we're in a championship.
I think that Woodrow could do a job, and he's gone and proved what many of us, suspected, but was never really given the chance. He's gone and proved that he can score goals at this level, given a run of games, and I think that has to be considered for next year. But I think it's going to go one of two ways. I think if we can't see him as our main striker, he will go, because he's now proved to himself, if no one else, that he's good enough to play at this level. And then he will have to make a decision based on his future. The other person I was thinking of that we couldn't get the name of was Stevie Humphreys. Does Stevie Humphreys have a future at this club? Probably.
Yeah, well, we just signed a long-term deal before he went out, didn't he?
Yeah.
But I think there's quite a considerable gap between him being first team ready and then him smashing PL2. So it's a case of where do we loan him again next season to make sure that development stays on an upward curve and that he's going to be ready for the Championship in 18 months to 2 years.
He hasn't actually done that well.
Well, I'm looking
he
on.
scored a couple of goals.
Yeah, he's been sent off
early
as well.
doors. He got sent off he scored and got sent off in one game, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't. Yeah, he hasn't set the world on fire in the way that a lot of people said he was going to.
There's a huge
League One.
difference, huge difference between playing reserve team football in PL2 and actual playing first team football in either League One or League Two. It's a huge divide that the FA is trying desperately to close, but it won't close anytime soon unless the structure of the league is changed.
Paul Hurst, the Shrewsbury manager, actually came on record a couple of weeks ago to say that he does really rate Stephen Humphrey, sees him more in the super sub role at the moment, says that he's maybe not quite strong enough to be starting. But, that's a decent progression for someone that was only playing reserve football to then be coming on playing, League One football and getting a couple of goals, like it seems like that. That's very impressive, I think, for Stephen. I think he definitely will be here for
a while.
The medium to long-term future at the very, very least. So, okay, well, thank you very much for your questions this week. Don't forget, if you want to get involved with some questions next week on the podcast, you can always tweet us at FulhamishPod. We do see pretty much every tweet that comes in. Or you can email us and we'll definitely see it, at fulhamish.co.uk.
Or editor at fulhamish.co.uk if you
Yeah.
want to speak to me
Jack's-
personally.
You set up your own little domain.
Jack set up his own email address.
For one, if you want to abuse him personally, you can do it
You
there.
can do it there, yeah, feel free.
Yeah, he was very adamant he needed his own email address. So that's,
Look, some of us have got to run a team of writers.
I don't know what you're doing on that email address. I just hope you're not just doing any illegal activities over there.
I think I prefer you should have secretary.
No, excuse me. Thank you. I have all of these roles for myself, thank you.
So, Secretary Jack or Editor Jack, whatever you want to be known as, what is the title of today's podcast, please?
I did quite like Drew Heatley's Tuesday's episode has to be titled I Want to Six You Up. And I also enjoyed your response of sexual feeling, Sammy, but you know I'm a sucker for a play on a nickname, so I'm going for Milling in Sixth.
Okay, is this in relation to...
Rotherham being the Millers, yeah.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
You are very good at this title job.
Thanks, mate.
You're not so good at designing flags,
Or setting up email addresses.
I'm actually excellent at both of those things.
but you're very good at choosing podcast titles. So, Milling in Sixth we're going for, are
Yes, indeed.
we? Okay, well, thank you very much for listening to today's episode. A little bit rogue in a couple of places, especially the flag segment. But I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to keep sharing the podcast on social media and also any forums that you're part of as well. Please keep spreading the Fulhamish word. We'll be back next week discussing two very, very big games away at Derby, and then we're back at home against Ipswich Town on Saturday. We're looking at both those games in detail. Will we still be in sixth? We will have to wait and see. But until then, boys, Farrell, Ben and Jack, thank you for being on tonight's podcast.
Thank you, mate. Toodles.
See you in a bit.
Goodbye.
If I'm honest, I haven't got a fucking clue about butter.